All right, everybody, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something I think it's pretty fascinating. It's these right-of-way rules.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at sailboat racing.
All right.
But it really kind of applies to everyday life.
Yeah.
So even if you're not a sailor,
Right.
you can get something out of this because we all share space with other people.
Exactly.
And we're all trying to get where we're going. And,
Yeah.
trying to do that safely and efficiently.
Yeah.
And with, courtesy
Absolutely.
and respect and all those things.
Yeah.
So we're looking at some excerpts here from 1516,
Okay.
and they break down two fundamental rules from the racing rules of sailing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that these rules haven't changed in years.
You're exactly right.
It's just like,
Yeah.
they're the bedrock.
It's the foundation. These are like the fundamental things that you need to know before you can even start. To think about tactics and strategy. So much of it is built on this idea of predictability. It's being able to anticipate what other boats are going to do.
Right.
And that's key to making good decisions on the race course. But it's also key to just not running into each other.
Yeah. Well, let's jump right into it.
Okay.
Rule 15, acquiring right-of-way, states that when a boat gains the right-of-way, it must give the other boat room to keep clear.
Yeah. Okay, so far so good, but what does room actually mean?
That's a great question.
Like, is it like a boat length? Is it an actual measurement?
So that's the thing about sailing. It's not always.
Yeah.
You can't just put a number on it. It depends on the situation. It depends on the size of the boats, the speed of the boats,
Right.
the wind conditions.
Yeah.
But the general principle is that you need to give the other boat enough space that they can maneuver safely and predictably. So, like, think of it like driving on the highway.
Okay.
Somebody's merging into your lane.
You don't just stay right next to them and
Right, you give them space.
force them to slam on their brakes. You give them space to merge in smoothly.
Right.
So room in sailing is kind of like that's that courtesy space to allow the other boat to maneuver safely.
Okay, on to Rule 16, changing course.
All right.
This one gets a little more technical.
Okay.
Especially when you add in the nuance of 16.2.
Right.
This is all about changing course when you already have right-of-way.
Right. Just because you have right-of-way doesn't mean you can just swing your boat around like you're on a dance floor. You still have to think about the other boats around you and make sure they have enough room to keep clear.
Okay, so what are some of the things you have to think about?
Well, for starters, you've got to be aware of other boats' positions and their courses. Then there's the wind, right? Which way is it blowing? How strong is it? That'll affect how much room other boats need to maneuver. And of course, you can't forget about things like waves and currents. They can make a big difference in how a boat handles. And when it comes to changing course with right-of-way, there's a specific addition in Rule 16 that's really important. It's Section 16.2, and it deals with situations where you've got starboard and port tack boats on a beat to windward.
Okay, so why is that situation so special?
Well, on a beat to windward, both boats are sailing as close to the wind as possible. So if a starboard tack boat, which has right-of-way, decides to turn away from the wind, they need to be extra careful. Because if that maneuver forces the port tack boat to make a sudden change to avoid a collision, the starboard tack boat could actually be at fault.
Even though they had right-of-way.
Exactly. It's a bit counterintuitive, but it's all about ensuring that the right-of-way doesn't become a tool for reckless sailing.
Gotcha. So it's like even if you have the right-of-way, you still have to use it responsibly.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So, we keep talking about this idea of room and keeping clear. Like, how does it actually play out in the real world? What do they mean for sailors?
Well, they're not just theoretical concepts, right? They have real consequences. When we talk about room, we're talking about giving a boat enough space to maneuver safely and follow the rules. And that space, it's not just about the distance between boats. You have to factor in things like wind, waves, currents, and even other boats in the area. It's about making sure they have the space they need to do what they need to do without having to take any drastic actions.
Okay, so it's almost like a bubble of space around the boat that needs to be respected.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, like a safety bubble that allows them to move freely and predictably.
Okay. You use this phrase, maneuvering promptly in a seaman-like way.
Right.
Which I have to say sounds a little vague.
It does sound a little bit vague.
Right.
What does seaman-like even mean?
It's like, what is that supposed to?
Yeah, like if I'm slamming my wheel over and doing a 180.
Right.
Is that seaman-like? Probably not.
Right.
Like think about a good driver. They use their signals. They break smoothly. They generally make their intentions clear, right? So that's like seaman-like driving. So in sailing, it's the same thing. It's about making smooth, controlled movements that are easy for other boats to predict. So no sudden jerks, no unpredictable turns.
So you're really trying to telegraph to the other boats what your intentions are so they can react accordingly.
And so that everybody can stay safe.
And then keep clear. That's basically just making sure the boat with right-of-way doesn't have to do anything to avoid you, right?
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. It means giving them the freedom to sail their course without having to worry about you. And there's an added layer to this when boats are overlapped. In that situation, the boat with right-of-way, they need to be able to change course in either direction without immediately bumping into the other boat. It's about giving them options, letting them maneuver strategically without being restricted.
Oh, I see. It's like you have to give them room to actually sail, not just like avoid a crash.
Right. And that's why understanding these definitions is so crucial. They're not just words on a page, they're the foundation of safe and fair sailing.
So it's like you said before, it's like a language that everyone out on the water needs to speak.
Exactly. And the better you understand that language, the more enjoyable and safe your sailing experience will be.
Okay. Makes total sense. So even if I never plan to set sail, this seaman-like approach can make me a better driver.
Absolutely.
Maybe even a better pedestrian.
Sure.
You're walking down a crowded sidewalk.
Yes,
you're constantly
navigating. You're like,
you're negotiating.
Trying to get around people.
Right. All those little micro interactions.
Just trying to figure out, are they going left? Are they going right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's all about those unspoken rules of anticipation and communication. This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I'm already starting to see the world differently. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll leave you with this. We often think of competition as a zero-sum game. Like somebody wins, somebody loses. But these rules of right-of-way in sailing show that even in a race, there's an element of cooperation. You're competing against each other, but you're also working together to make sure that everybody can compete safely and fairly. So it's this really interesting balance between competition and cooperation. And I think that's something that's worth thinking about, both on and off the water.
All right, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.
See you later.